Tell me one word that scares the hell out of Xi Jinping as soon as it is blurted into his ears. It's Quad. A security alliance of 4 nations, namely India, Australia, Japan and the US, has been giving China tremors for almost 3 years now. But forget this anti-China alliance of the 4 superpowers. Another Quad comprising 4 China hawk nations of the Indo-Pacific is already in the making. And this new Quad is sure to spell doom for the already sinking Communist Party of China. Hi and welcome. You're watching TFI Global, the foreign affairs and geopolitical analysis arm of the TFI Media Group. I'm your host Atul Mishra, and in this video I will point out how the touted wolf warrior diplomacy of China backfired in the Indo-Pacific. Let's begin. As if one Quad was not enough to give China night terrors, another Quad is brewing up in the Indo-Pacific. Taking heed, 4 China hawk powers of the Southeast Asian region have now decided to join hands to put an end to Beijing's grey zone tactics. So the 4 nations that stood against an expansive China are the Philippines, Vietnam, Indonesia and Malaysia. These states have been most at threat from China's illegal maritime claims for the past 15 years. China considers the South China Sea its hunting ground with its own maritime law and displays scant regard to the law of the sea, or the UN clause. China practices illegal, unreported and unregulated fishing in the waters of these countries. The aerial and naval incursions by Chinese aircraft and vessels are commonplace now. Being an economic powerhouse, China thought it had the authority to omit the concerns of these small nations. But now these nations are turning this crisis into a major opportunity. The 4 nations are now forming a mini Quad in the region to collectively develop with greater capacity building and regulatory support from the Quad states, a UN clause-based non-military means of pushing back against China's bullying. Meanwhile, Vietnam and Indonesia are also continuing negotiations to establish provisional boundaries in overlapping areas of the North Natuna Sea. Last year, the 2 nations signed an MOU pledging improved cooperation on maritime security and safety. It is readily apparent that the unbridled aggression has forced these small nations to cooperate on bilateral disputes and focus on the elephant in the room, which is China. Beijing has so far capitalized upon their bilateral differences to shove its own version of the code of conduct in the South China Sea. The bilateral disputes among its member states were the major reason why ASEAN could never make it up to China's bullying. But now these countries are realizing the need to solve their bilateral dispute to not let China toss around the law of the sea in their backyard. It is a common fact that China has for years engaged in grey zone warfare against tiny nations of Southeast Asia. Grey zone warfare is a strategy where China seeks to escalate tensions with its adversary to the highest level but avoids imposing a full-blown war. Under its grey zone tactics, China uses online propaganda, cyberbullying, political interference and other non-conventional aggressive ways of launching a covert war on its opponents. With grey zone warfare nearing an end and the tide sweeping towards long periods of military tensions, no big power can feign silence. It might seem as if the intensity of the warfare is dying down, but in reality such warfare might lead to greater human and financial costs because there will be long periods of no war, no peace conflicts during which military forces will be engaged. Now the Philippines, Vietnam, Indonesia and Malaysia are waking up to the China threat to safeguard their sovereignty and borders. They're also looking to develop closer ties with Quad nations that are India, Japan, Australia and the US. We know that China's economy is already at its weakest and the boasted wolf warrior diplomacy is also backfiring quite miserably. So it is payback time for China now. China's deep pockets kept these countries quiet for all these years, despite vehement suppression of their maritime and legal rights. But now they are waking up and getting ready to turn China's South China Sea ambitions into its biggest maritime nightmare.